Welcome to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today, we're joined by a guest whose career path embodies ambition, adaptability, and global impact. Born and educated in Pakistan, Mohammad Usman Mirza began his journey in LUMS before taking bold steps into the international opportunities across Singapore and Ireland. From his early roles in Pakistan to leading high-impact projects at Meta and Google, Usman has built a remarkable career at the intersection of strategy, operations, and global tech innovation. Alongside his professional journey, Usman is deeply passionate about mentoring and uplifting professionals, helping them navigate their own paths into global careers. His story is one of the resilience, growth, and giving back. And today we'll explore both the personal and professional side of his journey. Welcome on the podcast, Usman.
Thank you so much, Azam. That was a wonderful introduction. Very kind of you to say all those nice words as well. Appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So I guess we can kick off. Can you chat about your relation to Pakistan?
Yeah, no, thank you so much again for this opportunity as well. I watched a few episodes of your podcast and they were very interesting. And so I'm glad to be on the space. So a little bit about myself in terms of my relation to Pakistan. I was born and raised in Pakistan. I grew up in Karachi, which is where I'm originally from. And interestingly, I've lived in the three big cities of Pakistan. At least when you were a kid, that you heard these cities on the radio a lot. So I lived in Karachi, went to school in Karachi, then went to university in Lahore, and then worked in Islamabad for a year and a half. So I've gotten that exposure of all three cities. But I would say my relation to Pakistan runs very strong even today, apart from obviously being educated there for my schooling and undergraduate, and then working there initially as well. I have both my parents are in Pakistan. My wife's parents are in Pakistan. I have some siblings in Pakistan as well. A lot of family, my grandparents are there as well. So my relation to Pakistan still runs very strong. I'm usually in Pakistan as well, once or twice a year, maybe for Eid or some other event or so. But yeah, even though I've spent the last 8 years or 9 years outside of Pakistan, I think my roots are still very much attached to Pakistan.
If you were to chat about your experience in Pakistan, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so that's something that's been asked a lot, obviously, since I moved to Singapore in 2017. People are actually very curious about Pakistan. I think one of the first things that people sometimes ask me is why my English is so good, which is an interesting thing. But generally speaking, when I tell people about Pakistan, I think usually three things. I think I tell them we have some of the best tasting food in the world. We have a wide variety of food types and cuisines, and then the flavor is remarkable. The other thing I always tell people about Pakistan is that we have some of the best views in the world, depending on where you live, right? So we have an unbelievable diversity in terms of our geography. We have plateaus, we have glaciers, we have mountains, we have lakes, seas, whatever, you name it, and we have it. And we also have some of the highest peaks in the world as well. So it is the paradise for those who love nature. But that's what, and depending on where you live as well. If you live in the south, it's a bit more difficult to get access to it. But some of the folks I met actually in Singapore, they had been to Pakistan in the northern areas just to see the nature as well. That's something that I always tell people about. I think the third thing about living in Pakistan, the experience in Pakistan generally is Pakistan teaches you resiliency, no other country, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times things are working against you than
Yeah.
for you, whether that's by design or just unintentional as well. I don't want to comment on that, but it just teaches you resiliency in terms of your professional or your personal scenarios and situation. And so I think most Pakistanis that I meet, they're very resilient people. And that's a very common factor that you might see in all of them. So I think in terms of my experiences, that's how I describe it for most people. I don't obviously try to keep a lot of the negatives out of it because I don't want to talk too much about that as well.
Got you. And what motivated, so like when you got the introduction to go to Singapore and later Dublin, like what motivates you to go internationally in terms of the move to Pakistan? Because a lot of people, they're a little hesitant because, you're comfortable in Pakistan, family in Pakistan. So how did you make that jump to going
Yeah.
abroad?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think one of the things that's always driven me in not just my career, but a bit in my education as well, and I'll just get to it in a bit, is the fact that I hate being comfortable in a situation. I love being challenged. I've always wanted, so there's this, I don't know who said it, but there's this famous saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, change the room. And so I want to be around situations where I can learn and grow. And so it's growth mindset has been key for me, even before I knew what growth mindset really meant in terms of the phrase, right? So even in my university education, I opted for one of the toughest majors in business school for undergraduates. And just to give you an example as well, for all our courses, if we missed more than 4 classes per course, that was a straight F. You failed the
Oh boy.
course. And even if you were 10 minutes late, by the way. So it's
Mm,
not just missing the class. If you were 10 minutes late as well, that's considered missing. So it's a straight F. And all my friends were in different majors, most of my friends at least, where there was nothing of this sort. I don't know. Sometimes I question my decision, but I don't know why I pushed myself to do it. But even my entire career journey, so most recently as well, my shift from Meta to Google, I was doing really well in Meta, formerly Facebook, but I wanted to change because I felt a little bit comfortable. And so what made me move from Pakistan or Karachi, Lahore, Islam, whatever, outside of Pakistan was just to challenge myself and see how I'd be able to perform, but also experience what these different countries or so-called Western countries have to offer in terms of opportunities. So really, it was more of a situation where I thought I'd give it a go. Let's see if things work out, and if it worked out, it worked out. So I don't think it was ever any specific intention that hey, I have to move west or abroad.
got you. And were there any lifestyle adjustments or any general adjustments that you had when you moved abroad? Any struggles you faced that you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. When I moved to Singapore, right, one of the biggest cultural shocks for me or lifestyle shocks, whatever, was how punctual people were. But honestly, coming from Pakistan as well, it was a big change for me, right? And I guess it was also the company that I was working in Facebook Meta, right? Working with a global team, very set in terms of the processes and systems and just generally the culture was excellent, right? So that was the first time I experienced the fact that if you're late more than a few minutes to a meeting, literally a couple of minutes, you have to apologize, right? And so that wasn't the norm there in Pakistan. Generally speaking, these things are okay as well even though you work later in the evening in Pakistan, but this was just different in Singapore. So I think a big change for me was just in terms of punctuality. And I'll be honest, the Pakistani in me still struggles with it to this day, but it's a very good trait to have, right? Being punctual. But apart from that, it's just the sort of, I think culturally, or at least the sort of lifestyle that one has when they have to move and be more independent from being in a slightly more home-based surrounding in Pakistan where your parents, your siblings are all close by or in the same household. So I think a big change was just coming to terms with managing all of these things on your own and figuring things out where normally in Pakistan there'd be a few folks figuring out similar things. I did have that experience a bit when I lived in Islamabad. I was on my own, but it was still Islamabad. It was still Pakistan. I was familiar with the surroundings. I was familiar in terms of how to get things done. But when you move to a new country, you really have to figure out the norms there as well, right? Like people
Right.
operate in a certain way. You have to get to know how to interact with them and work with them. But honestly, by and large, I'd say it's been mostly positive, but maybe very few negatives that I can't even recall right now.
Yeah. No, it really hit a chord when you said the timing because you know weddings, like you set a time at 7, people are coming at 10, 11.
I went to a wedding in Dublin once, and you had to be there on time.
Yeah, yeah, you need to be out of the venues in the West. You can't just like
Yeah.
stick around in box. Yeah. Anyways, when you moved to like the West in terms of Ireland and also Singapore, were there any experience in Pakistan that you felt really helped you develop as a professional, like work experience?
Yeah. So honestly, I think the jobs or the roles that I did in Pakistan in terms of my work experience, w- those were the reasons I got hired by Meta, to
Okay.
be honest. So I think those really shaped my career. And I don't know if people do shout outs in this podcast, but shout out to my managers and my team at Telenor in Pakistan. They were phenomenal to be fair. And I was really young at the time as well. And I honestly, when you're young, you're a bit reckless, you're a bit foolish. No young person will admit to it, but the more older you get, the wiser you get, you realize that when you were younger, you're a bit reckless. So they're really patient with me. So I think my work experience across interactive research and development, which is the Public Health Department in Pakistan, IRD for short, and then Telenor Pakistan, and then Kareem, which I was there very briefly. I was only there for 3 months, but there were some of the people that were phenomenal as well. But I think I'd like to credit mostly my experience at Telenor Pakistan. I used to work on their website and their app. And so it was all about the analytics, the growth, a better digital marketing, complete rehauling, redesigning, all of that stuff as well. So all of that experience really helped me in terms of my professional learnings. And I think when I was obviously interviewing with Meta, a lot of those examples came up. Right? So I think that was really important. And I think just generally from LUMS to my university as well, I think one thing that I do want to talk about how that helped me in terms of my experiences was the fact that I was in the business school, which was pretty tough to be honest. It always, it always, I always had the perspective that I had to work really hard to get where I want to be versus taking things for granted. So that was just the mindset I had to develop because I was competing with some of the best students in the country as well, right? Just taking that hard work and the work ethic from there and the work experience from Tenor and these other places was really useful. And I think one thing I do want to mention as well, which I didn't talk about in my introduction, was I come from a family as well that's very hardworking. So my mother she was raising four kids, but she's also a doctor as well in Karachi. And my father, he worked some jobs initially and then he set up his businesses and he worked really hard for those as well. And my siblings as well. So I think just from a family, we've always had this importance, not just of working hard education, but having that sort of attitude. So I think all of that kind of helped me prepare for the opportunity when it came at Meta.
Got you. So, in terms of speaking more about the Meta experience as well, how did you get exposed? Was it just applying online? Did you network? Like, a lot of people find it hard to break into the big tech firms. So, do you have any general or like, how did you go about it?
Yeah, no. So 100% right, Adam. I think, unfortunately, while I think the talent is there in Pakistan, it's just that
Yeah.
we aren't exposed to those opportunities, or unfortunately, these days in particular, visa requirements are a big problem as well, like work authorization. And I think for me, like I said, I was always curious, right? Like and that's the thing. I didn't even know the word growth mindset until I later found out. But at that time as well, when I was working in Pakistan, one of my friends from school, actually, from Karachi Grammar School, he he got a job at Meta,
Oh,
Facebook at the
okay.
time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I honestly, so there was no opportunity, there was no available roles. But I remember reaching out to him that time and he got his job. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And that's so interesting. What do you do? I was just curious about his work. And I was speaking to him about it and just showing genuine interest. And I was interested. And to be fair, well, this was back when Facebook was cool. If it's 2016, 2015. And
That's
nowadays,
fun.
I think no young person uses Facebook or Gen Z, whatever. But back then in 2015, 2016, people used to use Facebook. But I think so. I spoke to him, and honestly, that was it. That was done. And interestingly enough, when I worked at Telnor in Pakistan in 2016, I told my team members at the time, and you can obviously no one's going to ask them, but people can ask them for verification. At that time, I told them, yeah, yeah, end up working for a company like Facebook or Google. This was all in 2016. And so just because I had seen it being a possibility as well, my friend
Yeah.
worked there, but he also was educated in terms of university. He went to the US as well, but he was in the same school as me in Pakistan, but then he went to college in the US. And so that's where he got his job from. And so there was still this sort of doubt that I had initially that it's difficult for Pakistanis to break into big tech directly from Pakistan without any formal foreign education. But then interestingly, a role came up in Facebook a year after I had spoken to him and I applied to it. And so he helped me get a referral as well. But at that time as well, and I think even now, I could be wrong, but I think I'm still one of the very few Pakistanis to this date that got a role in a big tech company without any formal foreign education or any formal foreign experience, and also in a global role. So the team that I got into initially was a global team. It wasn't specific to
Yeah.
EMEA or Asia or the Americas. It was a global team. And I think most people nowadays end up going to the market specific team, Asia team. But I think to this day, I'm still one of the only Pakistanis that have broken into tech that way. And so I think a big shift was just the mindset. But that's how I initially broke into it. And the rest was just, yeah, shit.
Gotcha. So, if you were to explain your role currently to a person, like not getting too specific in terms of what you exactly do, but if someone were to ask you what your role is as a senior strategist, like what does that involve?
Yeah, good question. So I think now my role title has changed. It's become a program manager, just for
Oh, nice.
context.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think I just give you an overview of both the role title changed, but the work remained the same. And so if
Gotcha.
I have to give an overview, I think I'd break it down in terms of skills and the work that's being done. So I think in terms of the skills that are needed, it's a lot of stakeholder management. It's a lot of program management, obviously seeing projects and programs end to end, executing them, initial planning. It's a lot of influencing without authority. So that's in a situation where you don't manage a team, but you have to convince a few people to do certain things. It's having a data driven mindset, how to take insights from data and use it to your advantage. It's a lot of strategic analysis as well, where you use this data or different events that have happened to shape or think through the vision of a product or a feature or a program or a process. And so I think some of these skills are what's needed. Obviously, having good communication is key as well. But I think generally my work is mostly on regulations in EU for big tech, not just EU for the rest of the world, but primarily EU because we have big regulations in EU. And so I just help teams prepare for regulations. And so we work with teams upstream and downstream, but we just help them prepare. So having to manage both those relationships as well. That's just my work in mesh. I'd be more than happy to dive into it. If people are interested, I can go into it.
Okay. So I guess in terms of actually for individuals interested in this area, do you recommend anything they should do, like in terms of studies or the way they present themselves in the interview process? How would you recommend, like in general, it doesn't have to be Meta, it could be like other companies as
Yeah.
well that they're interested in?
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. That's a good question as well. I think, unfortunately, I think when you apply for a job or when you're looking for an opportunity, a lot of times there's so much emphasis that is placed on how you position yourself, right? So I think when I'm thinking for something like this, I go back to go to market strategy sort of situation where it's like the who, what, and the how and the where, right? So you
Yeah.
always have to think about who your audience is in terms of where you're applying, right? So if you're applying for big tech, make sure you've positioned your resume accordingly. So if you're applying for, in just example, FMCG, make sure you know that audience as well. So I think it's really important to know what you want to do and where you want to go. I think in terms of the how, then how are you positioning yourself, which is the second thing. So if you're, for example, applying to big tech for, let's say, a program manager role, that's what you're interested in. If you want to break into that area, you have to be able to at least position yourself in a way where the experiences and the skill set sort of match, right? One thing I'd encourage people to focus on is make sure you're data driven, right? How to derive insights from data, because even if your role doesn't really require it, these tech companies are all built on data, right? That's the foundation.
Yeah,
But all
exactly.
the
Yeah.
sounds fair, but like the data comes from the things that it built, right? So you have to be comfortable with it. So get comfortable with it. Get comfortable with engaging with other stakeholders, right? Working with others, because you can't work in a silo, of course, unless you're like a genius coder or engineer who works alone, like you see in some movies.
Yeah.
The reality is you'll be working with a lot of other people, whether you like it or not. So be comfortable with people, know how to build a rapport, and just get along well with people. I think one thing that I always advise people, but a very, it's not an absolute necessary thing to have, but I think it's very useful to have knowing some SQL as well. Just build your profile in a way where it matches the sort of jobs that you want to search for. And I think if you want to break into the industry, they need to be networking as well with the right people. Because, and sometimes it happened unintentionally as well. I spoke to my friend who got into Meta all those years ago, right? I didn't even know at the time this was called networking, right? Unintentionally, I was with networking, but it helped me land a job in the future. And so I think build your network, whether it's intentional or unintentional, and just have the sort of foundation in terms of skills or knowledge that you need to have to break into big tech or any other sector for that matter. But there's a lot more that you can do, obviously. You have to obviously position your resume. You have to structure your resume in the right ways. You have to have the right sort of answers in the interview. You have to approach people for networking in the right way as well. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think by and large, you have to be able to have a foundation set of skills, like I mentioned, and then build the right network to at least know about opportunities that exist.
Awesome. Yeah, no, speaking about advice that you're already giving, do you mind like chatting about, I think if I'm not mistaken, you have also services that provide career coaching and mentorship. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, so I've actually, ever since I joined Telenor, which is a while ago, right? People in Pakistan have been pinging me for random stuff. So for folks you don't know on call, Telenor is a telecommunications company in Pakistan.
Yeah.
At that time when I joined, it was the second largest. It was like a 45 million user base. And so when I joined, people would tell me issues that they've had with the network, which I was not responsible for. So when I realized very early on, when you work in a certain company that caters to such a large amount of people, you will get requests from people for certain things, or just you get a lot of pings for that, right? So I think when I joined Meta for the first time, like I said, at that time it was a bit, you see a lot of Pakistanis even back then, but I think because it's become more common now in terms of Pakistan as a market being important to these big tech companies, so more roles are open up. But at that time, it wasn't very common for Pakistanis to be, even though there were a lot of Pakistanis, but it wasn't very common for Pakistanis to be picked up from Pakistan like that. I had gotten lots of messages from people for referral requests, interview help, and different sort of
Yeah.
things. Informally and unofficially, I have been mentoring and coaching people both in Pakistan and outside of Pakistan as well, in terms of how they can structure the resume, like I mentioned, interviews and networking, all that stuff. But in the last few years, I would say maybe a couple of years, I realized that I want to be able to scale up what I'm doing and formalize it as well. So I've actually formally started mentorship and coaching as one of the things that I do, because I love doing it. To be fair, I've been doing it unofficially for years, but I think it's
Yeah.
really important for Pakistanis. And this obviously isn't limited to Pakistanis, but it's very important for areas and countries who don't have the right sort of coaching or mentorship available to them, whether in university or in the work experiences, to get that sort of guidance that they need. Because I think we do have the talent, and like I said, it's not just Pakistan; it's so many other countries as well
Right.
who have the talent, but lack the guidance that people need. And so I've started this as well. I've been obviously doing unofficial talks and official talks as well. I've had a couple of events at my alma mater, LUMS. So I've spoken to, I think, 100 plus audience on 2 occasions. I was a panelist speaker in a Google event in Karachi as well, with 1,000 people in the audience. And I'm trying my best to scale up the sort of services that I'm in terms of the mentorship and the coaching, because I think that now is the time for Pakistanis to shine, and for other countries who have the talent, but unfortunately they don't have the sort of guidance. So I've formalized that. If people want to explore it, please reach out through my LinkedIn page. I'm going to have a website and some other options for leads for people to reach out very soon as well. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I guess for the time being, if any individual is interested, they can just reach out on LinkedIn. I guess
Yep.
that's an option as well. Okay. No, sounds good. So for professionals that are moving abroad, is there any skills that you feel are absolutely essential that they should have working professionally abroad? Is there anything you would say?
Yeah. Would this question be more geared towards tech, or just generally any skill sets you think, or for
Uh,
anyone?
so it'd be more relating to tech for sure.
Okay. So any essential skills? It's a good question. So honestly, I'd go back to those basics, right? No matter what role you will work in tech, you will need to be comfortable with data.
Okay.
So just as an example, a lot of roles that come up are analyst level or associate level roles, right? Which differ from team to team. So like a sales analyst, there'll be roles for a sales analyst, but there'll also be roles for vendor and operations analyst, right? But what remains core for these sort of roles and opportunities is the fact that you have to be able to work with data and derive insights and make recommendations, right? So make sure, if you're interested in this field, make sure you're in a role that kind of allows you to do this sort of work. And apart from that, like I mentioned, you have to be able to work with stakeholders. You have to be able to handle conflict. You have to be able to handle different priorities. Even if you aren't working in a tech role right now, if you want to break into tech, I suggest get yourself involved in work experiences or projects that have a mix of all of these, right? And some of these words might sound fancy, or like influencing the authority, program management, but honestly, all you have to do is be able to manage things end to end from start to the very end, being able to execute things, have a sort of proper plan or approach in place, have the right concepts in place as well. So I think for people who want to break in, having those sort of skills is critical. having the right sort of, if you want to apply for a technical role, obviously having SQL as a base is obviously
Yeah.
amazing. If you're a software engineer, having that sort of experience is amazing. But then, if I'm being honest, the one key thing though as well is having the right sort of mindset. And as part of my coaching as well, one of the sessions that I focus on is mindset, right? I've probably received around 1,000 pings since I first joined Meta back in 2017, where people are asking me for referrals for different opportunities and so on and so forth. I would genuinely say 95% of them don't have this sort of mindset that's required to succeed. And what do I mean by that? They probably haven't done the homework to look for roles
Yep.
themselves. They have no idea about the job description, responsibilities, qualification requirements. They don't have the sort of right work ethic to be able to build that sort of skill set or work towards your eventual goal of perhaps working in this. So I think, and then the lastly, I think actually a lot of them don't even have the belief that they can make it. And if I'm being honest as well, I have my doubts too. You
Yeah.
have it's imposter. Look up. People should look up imposter syndrome. By the way, it's a very real
Yes.
thing,
That's
and you sometimes feel like you don't belong in a certain place or you're not good enough. But I always remind myself, I interviewed for this. I'm doing well. No one, no one gave me a free pass. It was.
yeah.
I went to
Exactly.
6 rounds as well, right? So they must have found something. But I think just having this sort of mindset as well is very critical. And I'll give an example for people if they're tuned in so far as well. And when I was at LUMS, which is the university I went to, Lahore University of Management Sciences, for one of my internships, applied, funny enough, I applied to Ferrari in Italy. Um, and, and this is based in Lahore. I was based in Lahore,
yeah.
Pakistan, right? I have no visas. I have no work authorization. In fact, I had only visited Europe once before, and I was like a year old. I was 1 or 2 years old. Since
Right.
then, I had never visited Europe. I had never been to the US or any place. And I applied for an internship in Ferrari in Italy, and I applied for an internship in Apple in the US. And obviously, I wasn't going to get in, right? There's no way
You
that
tried.
they'd give a visa to someone for an internship. But those are the two companies or the products that I loved. I was very
Yeah.
packed. I don't have a Ferrari, but I just love the company, the brand, what it sells. And I loved Apple. The Steve Jobs is obviously a very inspiring person, but the products and everything. So I applied to it. And you know what's interesting though? I obviously got rejected, but I didn't get any automated rejections. I actually got a personal sort of email from the recruiter
Oh.
saying that, yeah, it's great that you showed interest. Unfortunately, we aren't out giving any work authorization or sponsorship visas, but I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. But it goes to show that I, not knowing that I was focused on this sort of mindset, I always had a bit of faith in myself. So I would suggest people have a bit of faith in themselves when
Yeah.
they're looking at opportunities.
Got you. And in terms of mistakes that you've seen, like you've already given advice to so many people in terms of, and you've done workshops and you've presented as well. Is there any big mistakes you've seen people do when they're going for global companies? They might be in Pakistan or in other
Yeah.
countries and they're applying abroad. Is there anything that stood out from your opinion?
Yeah. I think yeah, of course, there's been a ton of mistakes that I've seen. And unfortunately, some of these were very avoidable as well. And perhaps for this answer, I want to break it up in two different categories as well. I think one is just the general sort of the application or job process factors that are called. For example, not having the right resume, and not structuring your resume for the relevant roles, not being able to have the right sort of answers in an interview, not being able
Yeah.
to build the right network, approaching people the wrong way. So one thing I want to highlight as well is there have been people on LinkedIn who approach me for a referral and they'd be like, "Hey Usman, can you refer me for this role?" And that's it. I've never spoken to them before. And this is a random LinkedIn request, right? There
Oh
is
man.
no introduction, nothing. And so those are the kind of people that need coaching and mentorship for sure. But obviously I don't respond to such requests as well. I think,
Yeah.
but I have also responded to a lot of people who reach out in the right ways as well. But I think these sort of things are the mistakes that I've seen people make, right? Unfortunately, which are linked to the job and the role itself. But the other side of it as well, which is I think more to do with just the sort of attitude, I think, is a lot of people so a lot of arrogance, to be fair, when they want to. And it's not just about reaching out to me. I think it's just a general arrogance, or I'm not saying it's wrong to have a bit of self belief, or having faith in yourself. That's excellent, right? Having confidence in your abilities is excellent. I always look to sports personalities as my go-to, right?
Yeah.
Federer believes in himself, right? Nadal believes in himself. Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, all these LeBron James, these people believe in themselves, and that's great. But you have to be able to back it up by something to have that belief, right? You have to be able to work hard and show that. So I think a lot of people that have come to me and then generally interviews as well, they're very arrogant. They're more demanding that sort of maybe referrals or that they're
Oh man.
suitable
Yeah.
for a role. And it's not just about reaching out to me. I think even in interviews, I've seen people who think they know it all, and I think that's the wrong attitude to have. I think if anything, working in big tech has made me extremely humble. And the reason for that is there's so many people who are way smarter than me. And I work with so many of them on a daily basis as well, right? And so imposter syndrome is very real, like I said before, but you have to recognize that there's so much room for growth and learning. And so having that sort of approach to things really helps put things into perspective. And I've generally seen being humble, being positive, it's very much appreciated when you reach out or when you're applying or when it comes across in your interviews as well. So I think these two types of mistakes are what I've seen people make. And I think if obviously the one of them is all about the job process stuff, but the other thing you can start today as well. Like you can start from now, start being more humble, start having this sort of open mindset in terms of being open to the fact that people might know more than you and just learning from them. That will get you places. I guarantee you, if you keep an open mind, if you're open to learning, you get you places. I know people, by the way, just an example as well, who are 3, 4 years younger than me, who are one level above me in the company that I work in. Initially, it used to bother me so much that I have more experience. I definitely am at the same level in terms of the knowledge, but I realize they're probably better at other things than I am. And so I just learned to take it in your stride.
Got you. Be the last two, I would say, harder questions and coming to the end of the interview. So, if you were to give yourself, you have all this experience now, you've moved to Singapore, you're in Ireland working as well. If you were to go back in time to the time when you were in LUMS and you were to give yourself advice in terms of either accelerating your career or some things that you would have maybe
Yeah.
like just to get it faster where you are now, or maybe
Yeah.
change it up a little bit, but would there be any advice you would give to yourself at LUMS?
I would tell my younger self to invest in Bitcoin and Nvidia. Yeah. No, yeah,
On the
jokes
financial
aside,
side, yeah.
yeah, but jokes aside, I would give that advice. But like jokes aside, I think in terms of what advice I'd give to my younger self, generally speaking, professionally or
Yeah.
personally, I think before I answer, I think the one thing I like to preface with as well is when you're younger, especially when you're in university, like undergraduate, right? You think you're invincible. You
Yeah.
think you know everything. Obviously, you're foolish or reckless. You don't value the time that you have. So I think the one advice I'd give, maybe I'm saying one, but it's two pronged.
Promising.
Yeah, but is to definitely enjoy that time for sure. I'm not going to tell people to just work hard and get their head down and not enjoy their time because that sort of time period in your life is probably the last time that you have no major responsibilities in most cases. Obviously, a lot of people have responsibilities even in that time as well, and no disrespect to that. But I think in most cases you have that time period as one where you have the least amount of responsibilities before starting out in the professional world, right? So I would say broaden your horizon and experience new things because that will give you a much better perspective on what you like, what you don't like, what your personality is, what sort of things you value, what you don't value. So a lot of things will become a bit more clear at that time. But the other advice, like I said, it's not one, it's probably two, is make sure that you're using this time a bit more wisely
Yeah.
than I did, for example. So I guess you have to have a balance of the two in anything you do. If you're in university, make sure you want to get advice from your professors. They've probably seen so much more than you have. They've seen the world, they've experienced different things. Lean on them. It doesn't have to be specific to the course that you're taking. It can also be about a certain career path or just different opportunities that might come up. So I think utilize the library a bit more. Like I think one regret that I have is I only read books that were supposed to be for my course or like my major. And
Actually.
yeah, I wish I had, and just, I'm not saying do a lot, right? I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I am a big proponent of, and I learned it later in my life as well. So I'd give it this advice to my younger self is just 1% every day is good enough. Extra. Just push yourself to do 1% more every day. And one of my favorite football players, Gary Neville, he's not a famous footballer, but he's one of the hardest working footballers for Manchester United in England. And he'd say that if you cut in your training 1 yard in terms of the running, so they obviously for football training you run laps right across the around the field. And so he used to say if you cut 1 yard a day, you're cutting 365 yards a year. And yeah, and by that time, you would have fallen behind everyone else in your competition. And so utilize this time wisely, even if it's 1% every day. Learn something, experience something new, build knowledge. This now we're in the world of AI, right? We're in the world of AI. I also like to believe we're also in the world of AR and VR. I know it's in the back burner for many people and companies. I still think AR and VR will come good in a few years' time, but the mix of AI as well. So maybe read up about it, build your knowledge out on it, figure out how to use AI tools, 1%, not too much. I'll give you a small example as well. I love learning new languages.
Yeah.
It's just a passion of mine. So on my phone, there's an app called Duolingo. And
Yeah.
if I get a chance to work in that app someday in the company, I'd love to. But I have been doing a 5 minute course every day for the last, I think, 1,130 days or something. So I have a streak. And I'm right now learning Spanish and Arabic, but it's just 5 minutes a day. And it's gotten to the point where when I last visited Spain and Morocco, I was able to speak basic Spanish and Arabic in those
Oh, that's very cool.
respective countries to the
Yeah.
point where the people were just, the locals would respond to me in Spanish and Arabic. And then I had to tell them, oh, I just know this much. But I'm just saying that it's just 1% every day. So I think those are my two pieces of advice. Experience new thing, enjoy yourself, make the most of that time as well. But at the same time, do 1% extra every day. And it can be different as well. You can speak to a professor one day, you can learn something new one day. I learned to play the guitar in my time in college, learned the drums. Just give that 1% extra every day.
Yeah. No, I found it interesting how you brought up AI as well. Like even in the finance side, back in the day when you needed to look for formulas, you had to search the
Yeah.
MBA like forums and all that. But then now you can just like type in, okay, this is my prompt, this is the cell I needed, and it just generates the entire formula for you. So
It's amazing, right? Like, it's a
yeah.
life changing experience for those people who had to look up formulas. Because
For
I was one of those
anything.
people as well, right? I used to
Yeah.
look up formulas in Excel and really have to learn to figure it out. But literally a couple of days ago, I had to figure out a new formula in Excel. And I just went ahead and asked ChatGPT,
Yeah.
this is the situation that I'm in. And it gave me like 5 different formulas in one. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. It's really something. So I guess last question here. I think this is by far the toughest one. So how do you define success? So you can go both
Uh,
professionally or personal.
Yeah,
Like I'll leave it to
yeah,
you.
yeah. So honestly, I know you said it's a tough question, but it's probably the easiest question for me.
Oh, really?
Just because I'm very clear in my mind what success is for me. And I like to also let people know that it's okay to have your definition of success change in different time periods of your life. So I guess just to give some context, in school, the definition of success was, at least for my parents, at least to get good grades in my
Yeah.
O and A levels, right?
Yeah.
In college, you will get a good GPA or whatever, graduate. That was my parents' goal for me for success, but you have your own definition. But I think when I started working as well, I think initially my first few years, success for me meant getting promotions, learning new things as much as I can, building up work experience, getting recognition. That was success for me early on. And then I've only been working 10 years now, but like in the middle of those 10 years, the definition of success for me became more about hustling as much as I can, plus maybe a side sort of venture or learning. And it got to the point where every single commute of mine was basically all about podcasts and like learning new skills and all of that sort of stuff. And so right now I'm in a place though where success for me. So for the context of why I'm saying what I'm saying is I had my first child. I had a son 6 months ago. Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much. So that really made me rethink my definition of success as well, right? Which
Yeah.
is why that it's an easy question for me to answer because I've had to really think about it. And so success for me right now is having the right sort of balance between your professional and personal goals. And so my professional goals, for example, I want to be able to create the sort of impact that I'm creating at these big firms. Like, and I don't mean just Meta, Google, etc. Like, I don't mean Mang or Fang.
Person.
Just generally, wherever I'm working in tech, I want to be able to work in a place that aligns or in a role that aligns with my values or and lets me create impact and do the work that I want to do. Right. Obviously, it includes a certain level of recognition as well, but that kind of balances out with my personal goals or my personal success factors, which is being able to give my 6-month-old enough time at home. He's in a phase where obviously the primary caretakers are me and my wife as well. So just being able to spend that time with the family, doing certain things, getting him a bath, putting him to bed, just those sort of things, right? Being able to spend time with my partner, my wife. So success for me right now is very clear. It's a blend between my professional and personal goals. And if I'm able to find the right balance between the two, I think I'm happy. And part of the person, just for people to know as well, is having the right sort of health as well, right? So that's also success
Yes.
for me.
Yeah.
I'm now in my early 30s, and obviously my joints aren't getting any younger. So it's really important for me to have personal success in my life, to be healthy, to have mobility, to be able to do physically the things I want to do. And so I think that's not a very straight answer, Adam, but that for me is my definition of success right now.
No, that's a great answer because it's a very unique answer because a lot of obviously I asked this to all my guests like on the podcast and I feel it's like such an important response because every time period like there is going to be changes that happen but you
Yeah.
stick but then you're like sticking all the way back in before marriage and all that stuff you have this like certain way of success and you don't change it and you're like oh I need to stay
Yeah.
like that then that's going to cause friction in your daily life so it's
Yeah.
a great answer I would say so no
Yeah.
thank you
No,
so
thank you. I
much
think success is so much based on what you want it to be, right? So you have to figure it out for
exactly
yourself,
yep and that
do some
changes.
self reflection. And when life changes, be a bit flexible and change with it as well.
Awesome. Asman, you talked about so many different from your experience in Pakistan, how that's helped you develop internationally in Singapore as well as in Ireland now. And you talked about the services that you also provide, mentorship and otherwise. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so glad you reached out to me. I hope we're able to reach out to people. Even if 1% of the people are able to reach and hear us out and achieve their goals, professional or personal, I think your podcast would have been a huge success and a huge hit for the life anyway. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for the questions.